Before this story disappears like so many others, subscribe, like, and leave a comment, because once you hear what happened inside Dolphin Prison, you won't forget it. The night it began, Ahvaz was drowning in heat and sirens. A white Peugeot screeched through a half-lit industrial district, tires shrieking as it clipped a curb and spun to a stop. The driver bolted before the engine died, vanishing between warehouses along the Karun River. Inside the abandoned car, authorities found a single thing: a folded prison intake slip, stamped and stained with sweat. At the top, barely visible under a blue ink smear, were two words that froze everyone who read them: Dolphin Prison. By morning, the paper had reached an office that officially didn't exist. And by noon, a man named Reza Farhadi was gone. Reza wasn't a criminal. He was a civil engineer, mid-30s, married, quiet, and meticulous, someone who documented everything. His wife, Layla, said he kept notebooks the way other people kept photos. Measurements, names, dates. He believed that writing things down made them safer. The night he disappeared, he left one notebook on the kitchen table, open to a single line: "If they take me to Dolphin, find Dr. Kamali." No one could explain why Reza would be taken anywhere. But those who knew the city understood how quickly order could dissolve during unrest. Dolphin Prison sat on the outskirts of Ahvaz, a low concrete complex whose official purpose shifted depending on who was asked. Detention center. Processing facility. Temporary holding site. Survivors called it something else entirely: a place where time broke. The investigation fell to Major Amir Haddad, a career officer with a reputation for keeping his head down and his cases clean. Haddad had seen rumors crush men faster than evidence ever could, and Dolphin was nothing but rumor wrapped in concrete. Still, the intake slip was real. The stamp was real. And Reza Farhadi's phone, last pinged less than a kilometer from the prison gate, was very real. Haddad interviewed guards who insisted Reza's name never entered their logs. He reviewed CCTV footage that skipped entire hours. He requested transfer records that arrived heavily redacted, as if the paper itself had been interrogated. Each answer created a new question, and each question pushed him closer to a line he wasn't supposed to cross. Layla crossed it first. She brought Haddad the notebooks. Inside were sketches of corridors with no labels, lists of surnames followed by question marks, and timestamps that didn't align with any public record. One page stood out: a crude floor plan marked with arrows and a single word circled 3 times: Dolphin. Tucked into the binding was a hospital bracelet bearing the name of Dr. Murdad Kamali, a physician once assigned to prison intake screenings, now reportedly transferred. When Haddad located Kamali, the doctor refused to speak until Haddad mentioned Reza. Kamali's composure cracked. He whispered that Dolphin had rooms without clocks, and that some detainees were processed without charges, without numbers, without exits. Confessions were collected like inventory, he said, and when they weren't useful, people were reassigned. Kamali claimed he'd falsified medical clearances under pressure. He also claimed Reza had survived longer than most. That night, Kamali vanished. Haddad's superiors ordered the case closed. The intake slip was declared a forgery. Reza was reclassified as missing, presumed fled. Haddad was reassigned. But before he left his office, a courier delivered an unmarked envelope. Inside was a security badge, Reza's name etched faintly beneath scratches, and a memory card. The footage was grainy and brief. A hallway. A door with peeling blue paint. A man counting his breaths in the dark. As the camera tilted, a dolphin emblem came into frame, scratched into the wall. Then the door opened, and the person standing there was someone Haddad recognized. The footage ended before Haddad could process what he'd seen. The figure at the door wasn't a guard. It wasn't an interrogator. It was a man Haddad had shaken hands with less than a week earlier, Deputy Warden Said Moradi, the public face of Dolphin Prison, the one who smiled for inspections and insisted everything ran by the book. By dawn, Haddad was being followed. He noticed it first in reflections: an unmarked sedan lingering too long at traffic lights, footsteps that slowed when he slowed. The reassignment order that had seemed like a quiet demotion now felt like a warning. Dolphin wasn't just a place. It was a system, and systems didn't like loose threads. Haddad hid the memory card inside the lining of his jacket and began working off the books. He contacted Layla using a prepaid phone and told her to leave Ahvaz immediately. She said she couldn't. That morning, 2 men had come to her apartment asking about Reza's travel plans. They were polite. They drank tea. They took photos of the notebooks and promised to return them. They never did. Haddad went back to Dolphin after sunset, parking far enough away to walk the last stretch along a drainage canal. The prison looked smaller at night, almost unfinished, its concrete walls absorbing sound instead of reflecting it. At the gate, Murata himself greeted Haddad with a familiarity that felt rehearsed. "You're not assigned here anymore," Murata said calmly. "I'm following up on a missing persons report," Haddad replied, watching Murata's eyes flicker toward the jacket. Inside, the air was heavy and still. Haddad noticed the absence of clocks, just as Kamali had described. Doors were marked with numbers that skipped without explanation. Murata led him past intake rooms and into an administrative wing that smelled of disinfectant and dust. "We process people quickly here," Murata said. "Confusion is inefficient." Haddad asked about Reza Farhadi. Murata smiled again. He said Reza had been released. He said mistakes happened. He said rumors were dangerous. As they spoke, Haddad felt the weight of the memory card like a heartbeat against his ribs. Then the power went out. Emergency lights flickered on, casting the corridor in a sickly blue glow. Somewhere deeper in the building, a door slammed. A shout echoed, then cut off abruptly. Murata's calm finally cracked. He ordered a guard to escort Haddad out, but the guard never arrived. Instead, a man stumbled into the hallway. He was barefoot, shaking, his wrists bruised raw. He stared at Haddad as if trying to remember how faces worked. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse but clear enough to carry a name. "Reza wrote it down," the man whispered. "Everything." Murata lunged for him, but Haddad moved faster, grabbing the man's arm and pulling him back. For a moment, no one spoke. The emergency lights hummed. The man's eyes locked on Murata with a mix of terror and recognition. "They moved him," the man said, "because he wouldn't sign." Murata ordered Haddad detained. Haddad responded by shoving the man toward the exit and running. Alarms erupted, echoing through corridors that seemed to multiply with every turn. A guard tackled Haddad near the stairwell, but the man, Reza's cellmate, as Haddad would later learn, kicked free and vanished into the darkness. Haddad escaped Dolphin with a torn jacket and a single new truth: Reza had uncovered something worth disappearing for. That truth grew heavier the next day when Haddad returned home to find his apartment searched, his notes gone, and a single object left behind on the table, a dolphin emblem carved into wood. Layla called him that night, crying. She said she'd received a package. Inside was one of Reza's notebooks, returned without explanation. Most of the pages were missing. On the last remaining page, written in Reza's careful hand, was a list of names. Some were crossed out. Some circled. At the bottom, underlined twice, was a phrase that made Haddad's blood run cold. "Transfer site, basement level C." And beneath it, a date set for 3 days from now. The date circled in Reza's notebook arrived with a silence that felt deliberate. Haddad didn't sleep the night before. Neither did Layla. They met at dawn in a borrowed car, windows fogged, radios off. Basement level C wasn't on any public blueprint Haddad could access, but the notebooks, what remained of them, sketched a logic beneath Dolphin's chaos. Service corridors. Utility lifts. A sublevel that existed only during transfers. They entered through an old maintenance tunnel near the river, the kind of place no one guarded because no one admitted it existed. The air grew colder as they descended. The smell changed from dust to damp concrete and something metallic that clung to the throat. Haddad followed Reza's arrows, counting turns, matching cracks in the walls to pencil marks drawn months earlier by a man who knew he might not survive long enough to explain them. Basement level C was smaller than expected. No cells. No desks. Just a row of numbered doors and a freight elevator humming softly, as if it were breathing. A clipboard hung from a nail. The names on it matched Reza's list. Some were crossed out. The circled ones were scheduled for today. They found the room behind door 7. It wasn't a torture chamber. It was worse. Filing cabinets lined the walls, each drawer labeled with dates instead of names. Inside were confession forms, typed, signed, notarized, stacked neatly, identical except for the details. Crimes confessed to without evidence. Statements that contradicted each other yet led to the same outcomes. At the back of the room, a camera faced a single chair bolted to the floor. "This is how they disappear people," Layla whispered. "On paper." The elevator chimed. Morada stepped out flanked by 2 men Haddad didn't recognize. He didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. "You should have stayed reassigned," Morada said. "You could have lived comfortably." Haddad demanded Reza. Morada shook his head. He said Reza had been transferred after refusing to sign a confession that would have justified several arrests retroactively. Reza had documented inconsistencies, Moradi admitted, names reused, dates altered, outcomes decided before interrogations began. He believed truth mattered, Moradi said. "Truth is inefficient." Layla moved toward the chair, noticing dried blood at its base. Moradi followed her gaze. "No executions," he said quickly. "Only exhaustion. People agree eventually." Haddad played his last card. He revealed the memory card, the footage, the copy he'd already sent to a foreign journalist using Kamali's old contacts. Moradi's smile faded for the first time. "You think exposure ends this?" Moradi asked. "Dolphin isn't a building. It's a method." The lights cut out again. In the chaos, Layla ran. Haddad tackled Moradi as alarms screamed, dragging him toward the camera. When the lights snapped back on, Moradi was on his knees, framed by the lens he'd trusted for years. Haddad recited names from Reza's list. Layla read dates. Every word recorded. Guards flooded the level. Haddad was cuffed. Layla was pulled away. Moradi stood and straightened his jacket, composure restored. He leaned close to Haddad and whispered, "You did exactly what I needed." 2 days later, the story broke overseas. Clips aired. Documents leaked. Officials promised investigations. Dolphin Prison was temporarily closed for review. Haddad was released without apology. Layla received condolences without answers. 3 months passed. The journalist sent Haddad a final message before going silent. "The documents checked out," he said, "but something was wrong. The confessions from basement level C matched crimes committed after the supposed closure. New signatures. New dates. Same language." Haddad returned to the river tunnel at night. The maintenance entrance was sealed. Fresh concrete. No cracks. On his phone, a notification appeared, an anonymous upload. Grainy footage. A blue-lit hallway. A door opening. The dolphin emblem scratched into the wall was deeper now. If this story tightened your chest, the next one will haunt you even longer. Subscribe, stay curious, and don't look away.